we are doing Major 2025 paper 2-1, and like we discussed, this is a kind of a difficult question at some points. So let's begin. We have here a 1D array called competition name, which contains 25 competitors in a tournament that includes 5 events. Okay, then they're saying another 2D array, which is called competition score, contains the points scored by each competitor in the 5 events. The first dimension, so first dimension is always the row. First dimension is always the row, and second dimension is always the column. The first dimension of this array contains the index of the competitor from the competitor name. Now competitor name is a 1D array, so they are basically referring to the same index of the row number. And the second dimension contains their score. Okay, we'll stop at this point, and first we'll do what we always do, that is visualizing. So if we go to the visualizing part that I've already done, this is what's happening here. So here we have the 1D array called competitor name with 25 values, and I've written 25 values, and I've drawn this array vertically so it is easier for us to do the one-to-one mapping. Then they're saying there is this 2D array, which is called competitor score, which has rows and columns, and it is supposed to have scores for 5 events. So it makes it very obvious that there would be 5 columns. So when I say team number 1 at index 1, which is Madrid, then I can clearly see that at row 1, column 1, these are the points for the first match, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. Similarly, if I go to the fourth team, that is Arsenal, so that is their points for match 1, match 2, match 3, match 4, match 5. Okay, this mapping is done. Then they're saying each competitor receives a score out of 100 for each event. These scores are manually entered into competition score. So we have to make sure that all of these entries that we do, they are between 0 to 100, and they should not be more than that. Okay. Then they're saying that the medals are awarded to the competitors who are or multiple inviters who have the highest points in each of the 5 events, and then the highest points for all the 5 events. Okay, which means that we have to track the total points of each of the teams. So how many points Madrid got, how many points City got, etc. And then they're saying there's a 1D array called points, which stores the total number of points scored for each competitor. Okay, that means the total points for all of the 5 matches. So total points for 5 matches like this. So that is simple totaling that we have to do. Now, what is happening here? So if I go through this whole row, I'm summing it. Sum is 255, and I store it in the first row of the points array. I go to second row, that is city. I add all their points, and then I go to second index of points, and I store it there. Then I look at maybe index 6, which has Bayern. I add all of their column points, and then I store it in the 6th row of the points. Again, one-to-one mapping. Simple enough. Okay, now the question is saying take as input valid scores between 0 to 100 for competitor in each of the 5 events. Alright, so here they have used the word valid. So please remember one thing, that whenever the word is valid or whenever they say validation, that means you have to use either a repeat until or a while loop, which means you have to reject until correct values input. Just a second. All right, then they're saying that we have to calculate the highest points for each event and then output the names of the competitors who receive a medal for the highest points scored. That means whatever the highest points are, we have to find the maximum value from the points array. Let's assume it is 382 right now. So we will just remember which row number is this. It is row 4, and then we'll go and print the name at the row 4 from the name array, which is Arsenal. Maybe there is another team which has 382 points. Let's say that is City. So they will also get the same number of points, so on and so forth. Yes, so we have to find all the values that are the same as the max value, and then we have to calculate the highest total points scored for each of the 5 events and output the name of competitors with the highest total points scored for all 5 events. All right, So we also have to calculate the highest points for each event. Now, how do we go through each event? Now, this is kind of the tricky part of the question, which is that each event, the points are stored in a vertical manner, right? If we go horizontally, if we go for the row wise, that these are the points for one single team. But if I do it vertically, this means these are the points of all the teams for one single match or the event. So when we're calculating the highest points of the event, we have to go vertically. When we're finding the total of each team, we have to go horizontally. The only thing that is to be done here. Okay, let's start now. First of all, they're saying you have to use pseudocode or program code. You do not need to declare any arrays, and you have to use suitable messages. All right. Let's try to do this now. Okay, first of all, this points array that we have, this has to be initialized to 0. Okay, so we would never assume that the array is, since it's just made for us, it is already set to 0, so you have to initialize it. So we'll do that. So for I 1 to 25, because there are 25 teams, we are going to each index of the points array, and we're going to set it to 0, and then next I, like this. All right, then you also need to keep track of the highest value, so we can do that in a variable, or if you want, you can use an array for that as well. Now we have to, for the points array, we can simply use the variable. Now for the individual match score, we should also make an array called highest, so we can track the highest scores for each single match. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll copy it. Let's call it highest, or maybe max points, whatever you want to call it, like this. And then it will have five indices, and there would be 5 values. So the highest points here would be, let's say, 63. So I'll store 63. So 1 2 3 4 5. It has 63 here, then 95, then 54. Again, these are some arbitrary values, then maybe 98, and then 62. This is what we have here, right? So largest value from this, then this one, this one, this, and this. The mechanism of finding the maximum value is still the same. We just have to check if the current value is greater than max, then it becomes the max, and we simply assign it to this new array that we have created. All right, so once this is done, then we go back to the question. Now they're saying that you have to take the input of scores for each competitor in each of the 5 events. Let's start with this, and before we do that, let's also set our max points array to 0. That's what we call it, yes, max points. For each index, we can set it to 0. We can do it in the same loop. We don't need to make a separate loop. Okay, with this done, we then move on. Okay, first of all, now we have to go through each row, each column, right? So row 1, match 1, match 2, match 3, match 4, match 5, row 2, match 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means we have to use a nested for loop. So for row 1, 2, we have 25 rows and 5 columns. So 1 to 25, and then for column 1 to 5. Okay, now there is an issue here. Like the question says, that you have to calculate the highest point scored for each event. So in case of this question, we have to move vertically, right? So we can get the maximum points here. Again, for the second column, we have to move vertically. For the third column, we have to move vertically. So we have to do it this way as well. So in this case, I have to first iterate for row wise, and then I have to iterate column wise. And that is what I'm going to do. So I'll change these, I'll swap these. So for column 1 to 5, and then for row 1 to 25. What will happen now is, for each column, we'll go through all the 25 rows. Okay, now the question is saying that you have to take the valid scores for each competitor in each of the 5 events, and we have to calculate the highest points for each event. Okay, so let's try that. We'll use the repeat until loop, repeat until. Repeat until the score that we input is greater than or equal to 0 and score is less than or equal to 100, as mentioned in the question, between 0 to 100. and every time we'll ask the user to enter points between 0 to 100, and then we input that into score, and this keeps on repeating until the score is correct. Now once we have the correct score here, what we have to do is we have to place the score on the correct row and correct column. Which means that when we are at row 1, column 1, so this score for this team goes here, then this, and this. But eventually we would also need to go vertical, so we can do it in the same loop. What we'll do here is, the name of the array is called competitor score. Competitor score will go to current row and current column, right? So we can still use the same loop variables, even though the nested loop is running vertically now, but the row and column are still going to the same. This will still start from 1 and this will still start from 1, only the order is changed. So we'll go there and we'll put the value until this, the value that we got. Okay, so once this is done, let's say I input 42, 42 goes here at this certain row at this certain column. All right, once this is done, then they're saying that in the question that output the highest point scored for each event. We'll get to that. Output the name of the competitors who receive a medal. So we have to eventually find the total point for each team as well, right? Now this is done simply. What we have to do is we have to just total these values. So whatever I'm inputting into the current row and column of my competitor score, which are these values, I'll keep on adding them to the current index of the points. Current index means the current row. Now where are we getting the row from? We are getting the row from this variable here, row. So I'll just write that. So points current row is equal to points current row plus the value of score that we just got. If this is causing any sort of confusion, you can just do it in two separate loops. In the first loop, just get all the values, and then in the second loop, just go through the columns vertically. In fact, now we can just do it in a simple way. So 25 rows and then columns 1 to 5. It will waste a bit of time, but still it's up to you which approach you want to use. Okay, now this will add all the points in the current row for the whole team. Once this is done, we'll have, so we have the next column and we have the next row. So once this is done, the whole 2D and the whole points array would be fully populated with the total points for each team. Okay, this is fine now. Then they're saying calculate the highest point scored for each team and calculate the names of the competitors who receive a medal and output the highest points for the 5 events. Okay, so now we have to go for each event, right? That means you have to go column wise. So I'm going to do the same thing as we did, but in the opposite manner. So I'll just swap these. For column 1 to 25, this should be 1 to 5, and then for row 1 to 25 like this. What this will do is this will simply move our loop in the vertical way. So for each column, we go to each row. Okay, now what we have to do here is we have the max point array that we initialize to 0. We are going to get the highest value here and we're going to store it at the current index 1 or the row number 1. You can call these rows as well. Okay, so very simple. What we do is we'll assume that the max for each value, before we go to each column, I'll say that the max points are set to the first value of the competitor score current row column. Okay, now what am I doing? I'm assuming that first event is has highest score. Why am I doing that? Because I don't want to second guess the values. Although I know that the range is set between 1 to 100, so the safest assumption you can make it is that you can set all of the values to maybe 0, because you know that all of the values will be larger than 0. But If the range is not given, so you cannot just make a guess. Instead, what you can do is you can assign the first value into the maximum. So that is a safe assumption, and it won't cause any logical issues. Okay, so we are setting the match max to 0, and then we're going to get the current value out. So we'll go one row at a time for each column. We'll get the current match point, and then we'll check if it is greater than the maximum value. So let's call it event score. Event score would be stored at competitor score current row current column. And then we check if the current event score that we have gotten, if it is greater than the value of match max. Obviously, for every column, all the values will be greater than 0. So first match will get reassigned. And then if that is the case, then we will set this matches max to the event score. And we end F. Okay, I'm pretty sure you guys know how this works. We're starting from 0, so 42 is greater than 0, so 42 becomes the max. 62 is greater than 42, 62 becomes the max. 55 is not greater than 63, 26 is not greater than 63, and let's assume all of the values are not greater than 63. So once this is done, we'll go ahead and we'll place the value at the column 1 of my max points array. So we have to use the same indices. Okay, so now we are moving column wise. So we are going to use the column index to refer to the max points array. So what I'll do now is I'll do next row, and before we go to the next column here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place my match max. So the name of the array is max points, and I'll go to this specific column and I'll place the match max there. Again, what does the column have? The column has values from 1 to 5. So we are again doing direct 1-to-1 mapping. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this guarantees us that by the time we have run the loop completely, we'll have 5 highest values for each event. Now in the next part, they're saying calculate the highest point. So we've done that. Let's cut these. We have done this. We have done this. Then they're saying output the names of the competitors who receive a medal for the highest points scored. Calculate the highest total points scored for 5 events. Okay, so we have done this as well. We have the array here, which has all the 5 highest points. They're saying output the names of competitors who have received a medal for the highest points scored. Okay, so we have to here go through the whole points array, and here we have to find the maximum value. And in this case, the maximum value would be 268. So I'll have to print that Madrid won a medal, and then also Arsenal won a medal. Now what we have to do here is that we have to first find the max value once, and then we have to iterate through the array and check if any value is equal to max value, right? So we have to do the looping thing twice now. So let's do that. First I'll add the comments at the end. Okay, first find the max value for total points. Okay, we have to literally use the same logic, except now in this points array we have the values here, so we can just run a simple loop from 1 to 25. You can just use either row or column, or I, totally up to you. And then you have to do it again to find the maximum, to check if there are multiple teams who won the medal. So for I 1 to 25, there are 25 rows, 25 total points. Now that was match max. Let's call it points max. Again, we're setting it to 0 because we know every value will be greater than 0. So we get the current value out. The reason I use this current value is because I don't want to rewrite this competitor score over and over again. In fact, let's use current here as well, to use the same variable instead of making multiple ones. So current is equal to, this is the points array current I. Okay, so we'll start with this point, 268, etc. And then I'm going to check if the current is greater than points max, which is initially going to be 0, then I'm going to make this the value max. So I'll say points max becomes equal to current, and then we do end. And again, you guys know what will happen. It will start with 268 as max. Then is 188 greater? No. 276 greater? Yes. So then is 268 greater? No. So maybe let's say this team is also 276. This is 276 will remain the maximum value. Now, once we have the maximum value, now we have to, the question says that we have to identify all the names of the competitors who won the medal. So we have to go through the array again. And now this time we have to just check if any of the values are equal to max. And in our case, it would be row number 3 and row number 5. And we have to print their names. Again, very simple. Let's just copy this whole thing. There are multiple ways of doing this. So whatever suits you guys, you can do that. Okay. I'm just going for the simpler approach, although we are writing more code for that. Okay. 1 to 25. And then we get the current points. And now instead of checking greater, we are just going to make this equal. If current is equal to points max, then we'll simply output the team name. Output. They're saying output the name of committers. So we'll get the team name. Okay, now how do we get the team name? We'll go to the competitor name array at that specific index. Okay, now the index is stored in which variable? It's stored in index I. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at the specific index, we'll go to the competitor name array and we'll output the value. So I'll say competitor name index I, and let's print one medal for highest points. And then this will print all the values that have won. So this would, in our case, these would be the two values, AC Milan and Barca. Okay, so we're done with this part as well. So the names have been printed. Now they're saying calculate the highest total points for each of the 5 events. We have already done that. We have stored them in the array called max points. So these are the values that we have. Now in the last part, they're saying output the name of competitors with the highest total points scored for the 5 events. Okay, so now we have to figure out which team scored the highest points for these values. Okay, so we have to find the team with the highest points from the maximum, like we discussed. Okay, this is going to be very simple. We just have to find the maximum value, and again we'll assume the max to be 0, and we'll compare. 63 is larger than 0, so 63 becomes the max. Then maximum becomes 95, then maximum becomes 98, and then maximum remains at 98. Now, once we have this maximum points, we have to again go through the array, and then we have to figure out which team got these points, and then we have to output their names. So let's try this. Okay, so who got 98 points? We have to keep track of that. So this was team number 1. So we have to store their row number as well. Let's try to do this. Now we are going to output or find the overall max points for all 5 events. We'll loop through it. So for I 1 to 5, okay, let's get the current points. So current is equal to max points index I, and then we check if, so we don't have any variable here. Let's call it events max. I think we had an events max up. No, we don't. Let's call it events max. Again, let's set it to 0, and we check if the current value is greater than the any value of the current events. If that is the case, then that event max will become the current value. And then we do endif, and then we do next time. Okay, so with this, we are guaranteed to have the maximum value, which in our case would be this maximum value, which is 98. Now, the only thing left to do here is that we have to also link this algorithm to find where the 98 was stored so that we can get the team name. And in order to do that, we'll go all the way up in the previous loop where we were finding the points column wise. Yes, here we were finding the column wise points. So here what we can do is we can store the values for max points. Yes, here we can store the values of whichever row we're finding the value on. So here we stored the value in max points column, and we should also store on which row number we found it. Let's call it row number, or max row, maybe max row would be set to row. So whatever the current row number is, we'll store that in the max row, right? And again, let's say if we found 98, it was in row 1, so we stored that. If we had 62 here, 62 was stored on row 3, so we stored that as well. So now the row number is stored. Once this is stored, what we can do now is we can access this row value and we will be able to find the value that we had. Now the maximum value is there, so we have to go through the maximum points array and we have to check if any other values are equal to 98. So the same repetition that we did before. Again, 1 to 5, current is equal to max point, and we check if current is equal to events max at any point, which is the value that we found before, then we are simply going to output the value. Okay, how do we output the value? The output would be stored, the row number will be stored in the maximum row number. So we'll go up, the name of it was max row, and I'll bring the team name. The name of the team is the array is comparator name at max row, and it will say has highest points for all 5 events. And that is it. Now we just have to add the comments. The comments should be meaningful, so let's quickly do that. So we will say initialize points and max points arrays to 0. Then here we are inputting the values. So inputting values into C's comparator score array and validating input. Then in this case, we are finding the max value for each event and storing it in max points array. Then we are here finding the max value for the total points. We are finding the highest value of total points for all teams. And then we are checking iterate through total points of all teams to see which has scored highest overall and won the medal. And then here we are finding the overall max points for each of the 5 events. So this is what we did here. This was all row wise, and now we did it column wise as well. Okay, and then finally what we did was we output the team names that got max points for each of the 5 events, and we told them that they have won the medal, has highest points for each of 5 events and won the medal, because the question says that the team will only win medal if they have the highest points in all of the 5 events and have scored highest in each of the 5 events. And with this, the whole question is complete.